I've had quite a few comments on my videos from some American people have asked me if I've been to America. And the answer is yes, I have, but it was many years ago when I was in my 20s. And yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I'd been in Europe and I flew from London to San Francisco. And I'll tell you about what happened. My first experience in America, we arrived at San Francisco airport, and coming from London, spending about 5 months in Europe at the time, I remember arriving in San Francisco, and the minute I went through the airport, I just could feel a different edge to being in America. And those of you who have probably been to Europe, UK, and compare it to America, yeah, you might understand what I was thinking. It had a different edge to it. Anyway, so I arrived in San Francisco, and I really didn't know how long I was going to stay in America. So I left the airport and went out to the taxi booth and got a taxi, and the taxi driver said, well, where we go? And I said, just take me to a reasonable hotel, budget priced hotel in San Francisco downtown. And okay, we get in the taxi and we arrive in the street, and I look at the street name and it's Mission Road, San Francisco. Now, being that age group, I remember the famous American show called The Streets of San Francisco. And I remember Mission Road. Mission Road used to come up a lot. It was Problem Street. But that was the streets of San Francisco. That was 1970s, I think that was made. Anyway, so he's dropped me off there, and I've got out, got my suitcase, and I'm walking down the pavement, and next thing I'm walking towards the hotel which he wanted me to go to, which was on the corner. And then I'm walking along, next minute I hear his voice, hey Whitey! And then I look across the road, and there's a group of black guys standing there. And I thought, what's going on here? So I just nodded, hi, and they just said, hey Whitey, where you going? I didn't know what they were going to do. Anyway, I just said, just going down here to the hotel, and they just let me walk off. So I got to the hotel, and I walked in the reception, and the reception had a full glass frontage on it. Now the Americans who are watching this, they'll probably think, well, that's normal. But for me, coming from Adelaide and Australia, we didn't see a reception desk in hotels with a full glass, bulletproof, right across the reception hall with just a little hole where you could talk to the receptionist and pay through the money. Anyway, I said, listen, yes, I've just arrived in San Francisco. I need a room. I need to stay somewhere. And she said, how many hours do you want it for? I said, what do you mean? She said, how many hours? I said, no, I want a room for overnight. Anyway, she said, fine, and I forget how much it was then. So I got the room, and then I went up the old elevator, and then I realised, gee, this is not a great hotel. Mission Road, San Francisco. Really, really budget hotel. So I go up the lift, and I get to the room, and I open the door, and the room's pretty ordinary. Put my bag down, and then turn around to shut the door, and on the inside of the door there's about four latches for locking the door, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going on here? How come it's got so many door locks on it? Anyway, that was said to myself, well, welcome to America. Anyway, nothing happened. It was perfectly safe. I stayed there one night, and then I had to work out what my plan was in America. And I left that hotel, went down to Fisherman's Wharf, and then I thought, well, I need to get around America. I'll probably stay for a couple of months. I want to get around America. And anyway, I went down and I ended up finding a car. I thought, I'll drive around America. So for those of you Americans who are watching, I bought a 1975 Ford Maverick Auto, and I paid $250 for it back in 1987, right? Anyway, so that was good. I had my car and I set off and started driving down to LA. And that was my initial first visit to America as a kid. Not a kid, but I was in my 20s. And I'd used that car. I drove right around America, right down to New Mexico through San Diego into Tijuana, and then across the bottom of America up to Memphis, and then down to Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Key West, Key Largo, you know, all the sites down there, Disney World, and it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and I had a few problems with the car. $250 car, you know, that's the sort of problems you'll have. It broke down a few times and I had to get mechanics to fix it. But I stayed in youth hostels mainly, and cheap budget hotels. I loved Florida. I thought Florida was great. Just Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, the Epcot Center, Disney World. Yeah, they all still are memories I've got, and I loved Florida, and then I made my way up the East Coast, and then eventually I had the car nearly 2 months, and by the time this would have been late December now, we're talking early January, and I'm going through Des Moines, Iowa on a highway, and there's snow both sides of the road. It's cold, and then the car, the Ford Maverick, blew a Welsh plug out the bottom, I think they called it, freeze plug, and that was the end of that car. I'm out there by myself, and I just had to shut the door, get my bag, lock the car up, get the keys, and I started walking towards the closest truck stop. So there I am, and now I'm troubled now. I've got to get back to San Francisco because my time's nearly up in the United States. Anyway, so I went to a truck stop and I said, listen, there's a Ford Maverick about a kilometre down the road. You know, would somebody like to buy it? And eventually I found somebody, and they said, I said, here's the keys, it's down the road. And he said, oh, how much you give me? He said, $25. So I sold the car then and there on the spot for $25. And then I had to work out how I'm going to keep going. How am I going to get back to San Francisco? And the trucks, I remember it clearly, the truck drivers were very, very cautious about giving, I think it's against the law at that time they were telling me, but giving me a lift in one of the semi-trailers. We say semi, they were saying semi, of course. And anyway, eventually I found one that gave me a lift in the semi-trailer, and that got me to, I think it was Utah, Salt Lake City, I think I ended up getting to, and then I jumped on an AmeriCruiser, and that was called in those days a passenger bus, American service, and I jumped on that, and then I stuck with that all the way back to San Francisco, where I got to the airport and I booked a return flight to Australia. So look, that's just a little story, because a few people, American viewers, have sent me messages saying, oh, you know, did you ever go to America? And I said, yeah, I have, and that was my first experience of it when I booked that first hotel. And yeah, I never had any trouble in America. I never got mugged or anything. Everybody was very friendly. They treated me beautifully. They're just a very friendly race, and I did run into some travellers I gave lifts to in my car who had been mugged in certain parts, but I never had any trouble. And yes, I haven't been back since then. I was in my 20s, and now I'm a lot older than that, but I do want to go back there one day, and I don't know whether I'll buy a cheap car again and drive around. I think that's probably out of the question, but I'd like to see as much as this next time I go that I missed the first time. But I did go to a lot of states the first time, including Washington DC and New York and Boston, Chicago. But there's so much other areas of America that I'd like to see, which is New England, etc., and probably more in the middle part of America. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the story, but that's those people who were thinking about whether I'd been there or not. Yes, I have, and that was my experience.